Hey everyone, Brendan Sander here. How are you? Thank you so much for joining me and welcome to another episode of New Music Finds. So this is where I like to collect together all the different albums that I've purchased over the past week, and I get it from different places like my local record store, but also online retail like Amazon, eBay, and more. And for this past week, I got quite a few different things here. I've actually got 16 things to run through with you, and we'll do that here in just a bit. But before we get started, if you're new to my channel and you haven't already hit the subscribe button, please do. Also leave a comment, hit like, all those things help support my channel. I would greatly appreciate it. And of course, as an added bonus, by turning on notifications, you're going to stay up to date on really cool episodes just like this with New Music Finds. So as I always like to do, kick off with new releases that I picked up. And I've got some going back several weeks because for me at least, they were on back order and I only just received them. So first one up, Black Rose presents Shake Your Moneymaker Live. So I had this on pre-order, and for whatever reason, it was still on back order after a couple weeks. I went up to my local record store, Sound Exchange, and luckily they had a copy. So I got it. And cool thing is, so disc one in this is their debut album, Shake Your Moneymaker Live in its entirety, and the second disc is full of hits and covers and things of that nature. So nice split there on it. My only complaint is that them running through their first album, the debut album, that disc sounds sort of tired and doesn't seem to have a lot of energy in it. But yet with the second disc, where they move off of that and they're doing other hits and deep cuts and fan faves and stuff like that, it seems like the energy really picks up. So not as big a fan of what I thought I would be, which was the first disc. Kind of the whole reason for picking this thing up. It's actually the second disc that I like a lot on it. But they do a cool version of Papa Was a Rolling Stone on here. And then it closes with two additional cover songs. It's Only Rock and Roll by the Rolling Stones and the song Rock and Roll on here as well. So the other kind of complaint with this is there's no booklet other than this thing. And when we open this up here, it just has the track listing that's same from the back. So we don't actually know who is playing on this thing. And it might be a little hard for you to tell, but if I lift this up here, you can see that there's text on the back side of this, yet it's glued down, so I can't see any of that. So I don't know if that actually told me any more information, but I'm really, really disappointed with the packaging on this because I know there's only Chris and Rich Robinson here, the two brothers from the original lineup, but I would have liked to know who else it was playing on here without having to go to the internet and check that out. But anyways, got that one there. And then this one here arrived a week late for me, coming out March 31st, but I got it middle of last week. Last in Line, their third album, this one called Jericho. And if you're not familiar with Last in Line, although you probably are by this point, but it's started off as a sort of tribute group to Ronnie James Dio, the Dio band itself having the guys who played on the Last in Line album. So Vivian Campbell is on here. It used to have Jimmy Bain, but he passed away, so he's not part of this. And we do have Vinny Appice on drums, also from that lineup. And then Andrew Freeman singing, who, while he doesn't really sound like Ronnie James Dio at all, he's a great vocalist and certainly does them justice. But I've always been into the band more for the aspect of their original songs. In fact, they've never made a live album so that I can even hear the Dio classics, and kind of surprised they didn't kick off with that. But well, I didn't expect to enjoy this one because when I heard the first couple singles coming off of this, it really didn't do a whole lot for me. There you go. You can see Vivian Campbell, Andrew Freeman, Vinny Appice, and their most recent bass player, Phil Soussan, in there. Once I got this and listened to it in its entirety that way, so much better. So very classic example of, not always relying on hearing samples first or the preview of an album. Sometimes if you like the band, you just gotta get it, and you probably will warm up to it or at least enjoy it for what it is. And certainly Last in Line, Jericho, their third album, I'm definitely doing that. Now on to the new releases that came out this past week, April 7th. Picked up the new Paul Gilbert solo album called the Dio album. And this one's cool because, sort of in line with this, getting two Dio things back to back like this, he does an album entirely of Ronnie James Dio songs, so featuring Rainbow, Black Sabbath, and Dio the band, or solo, however you want to think of it, stuff on here. Pretty straightforward cover versions of it, except that instead of having vocals on it, Paul Gilbert plays lead guitar in the style of the vocals. So there's nothing of real surprise here. I think I kind of would have enjoyed it if he had shredded over the tops of these songs and not just covered straight the vocal, but that's how he does it. And then he pretty much plays note for note the guitar solos as well. So they're just reinterpretations, following pretty much the template of Everything But Done, Paul Gilbert style. And it is beautiful, it's nice to hear, but I do think I'm going to have to be in the mood for Dio to listen to it, as opposed to it being a Paul Gilbert album that I would enjoy as cover songs and so forth, but that's just me. All right, and the last one I picked up, I know a lot of you guys were interested in, and when I say last one, I just mean of the new stuff. Kiss Off the Soundboard, Poughkeepsie, New York from 1984. Another one of their official bootleg series. There's the inside. They don't really do any packaging, no booklets, anything like that. There is this producer's note on the back side because they wanted to let you know this is the only known official live recording featuring Mark St. John. He only did, I think, 10 to 15 shows with them before. He had a medical condition where his hands swelled up and he could not play with them, and then eventually stepped aside, and Bruce Kulick became the new guitar player at that time. So they're saying that this is not really up to par, but at the same time, for historical purposes, they wanted to release it. And I would say from the very first opening song, it sounds like a bootleg, as they're still adjusting vocals and other things, and it's a little quieter, muddier, that sort of a thing. They kind of flesh it out. So by track 2, it's a lot better on here. I almost turned it off with track 1, but I stuck it out. I wanted to see what this was all about. And they definitely sound a lot better from track 2 all the way through to the end on here. But the guitar is kind of pushed into the background on it. It's not as upfront as the vocals and the bass and stuff like that are on here. And previously I talked about this. There are 2 songs listed as incomplete. Number 10, Young and Wasted, and number 18, the last track, Rock and Roll All Night. And that was due to, on Young and Wasted, they were flipping the tapes over during the middle of the song. Not really smart to be doing that, guys. And then on track 18, the very last song, they ran out of tape. But they do a nice job, a nice way of blending, so it doesn't just cut off. They, on Young and Wasted, they actually merge them really well so that it just sounds like a continuous thing. And if you weren't really listening to it, you'd think that was just the way that it was. And on the last track, they fade it out, but it sounds like, it's the end of a thing. So even though you don't fully get the final note and the big sort of bombast at the end, maybe the fireworks or whatever, it actually sounds fine. So it was not as big a deal as I was thinking. So if that was holding you up at all, definitely worth checking out this 1984 live release from Kiss. But what I am finding with all of these, this is the 5th one they've released so far. Kiss Alive, Kiss Alive 2, stuff like that, definitely tons of overdubs on those because they do not sound anywhere near that good live. And I've seen them live in concert, and I kind of always knew that, but it's a little different when you're listening to a live album versus being there in person. You seem to overlook or miss a lot of those mistakes and things like that, or the vocals where he turns his head and he's not into the microphone, that kind of stuff. I notice all that stuff when I'm listening to live albums, which is why I'm not a big fan of live albums. But if they're historical like this, they've got a lot of deep cuts on it. This one has a number of them. There's a lot of energy. I tend to enjoy them far more than just straight up greatest hits, live albums kind of things. Okay, so that was the new stuff that I got this past week, but I also went to Princeton, New Jersey, to Princeton Record Exchange, another one of my record stores that I like a lot. I only hit it up every few months because it's a good solid hour drive from where I am. But when I go, I always make some good scores, and I got 12 CDs from there, all really great deals for like $1.99, $2.99, $3.99 kind of stuff. So very, very cool. A few of these though paid the regular, like $8.99 or $9.99 price on, like this one here. band called Heaven. The album was Bent. They came around 1980. They very much in the vein of sort of a heavier sounding AC/DC. I'm familiar with it because I believe the lead vocalist, Alan Fryer, was up for the role that Brian Johnson eventually got, and instead, of course, Brian Johnson got it. But, you know, I've heard about the band in that regard. I remember checking them out for that reason, and I think probably that's also why they get compared a lot to AC/DC and so forth. But this one here was $9.99, even though it was a used album, but I've never come across this one in the wild, so it was great to be able to get that. This one here, same thing, never seen this one in the wild. In fact, I didn't even know this band had more than one album. Liggy Lord, and I don't know what that means or stands for. Any of you guys know what that means? I'd love to know. I'd also like to know what a liggy is, because I know that there is Geordie Lost His Liggy, the song that Brian Johnson in the band Geordie performed and actually had a hit with. So I know it must mean something, but it must be a British thing or a UK thing, because I'm certainly not familiar with it. Liggy Lord, anyways, is a sort of traditional, also power metal band. They're not really thrash, more in line with Judas Priest than anything. And I've got one of their albums, and I found that one on a whim from Metal Blade and picked that up, and that one was really good. And when I saw this one called Master Control from, I think this is 88, I jumped on this, but this was $17.99, so I paid a pretty penny for this one here, but since I've never seen that one before, it was worth it. Now, the rest of these are the ones that I was talking about that were the $1.99, $2.99, $3.99 kind of stuff, so I ended up getting really good deals on these, which balanced out that. In all, picked up 12 of these for around $60, so I feel pretty good with that number. And if I hadn't picked up those two more expensive ones that added up to $28, you can see it would have been an even better deal. Italian guitar player Alex Mossi, Vertical Invader. This guy here, Shredmaster. I've got one of his albums from like 85 under the band name Mossi, and I think they have a vocalist in that group, but never had just a straight solo album or knew that he did just the straight up shred instrumental guitar. But this album here from 1990, that's what this is, so that was a really cool find. Donnie Miller, one of the boys. If you just look at this here, you know that this is going to be some straight up, you know, melodic rock, glam metal style type stuff. This is 1989 on CBS Records. Just that hair and the girl on a motorcycle with him kind of thing tells you all you need to know. I did a little research on it before picking it up and found out that there's some cool guests on it. Tommy Shaw, some co-writes, things like that. So, well, I don't know anything about Donnie Miller, sorry. You know, the fact of who played on this album, joined him, co-wrote, stuff like that, I think says a lot to who he was or who they anticipated him being. But put out one album and disappeared. That was kind of all the info I could find on him. But I've turned out, this one here has turned out to be one of my favorites out of the finds. Good stuff. Found this. I have this as a 2 CD set, combining their only 2 albums, but finally found a standalone copy. Dust, Hard Attack. And the band members that are in this is really what's notable. Kenny Aronson, and I initially only knew that name from HSAS, Hagar, Shern, Aronson, Shreve. But Aronson has turned up in a number of different projects and bands over the years, playing with different people and stuff like that. So it turns out he's far more prolific than I originally knew, but definitely part of this. And Mark Bell, better known as Marky Ramone, on drums. And then you got Richie Wise on guitar and vocals. But very cool album from 1972. A lot of people cite this as early, starts of early heavy metal, proto metal. It's not heavy metal, but definitely got the early startings of that sort of stuff. So that gets cited a lot. Found this one. I finally found an actual Peter Frampton greatest hits from back in the day. I'd seen some other stuff, but they were more those label comps and stuff like that. But this is A&M Records putting this out. Only has one live track, Show Me the Way. The Baby I Love Your Way on here is actually the studio version of it, whereas usually you get those label comps and they fill it full of live tracks from Frampton Comes Alive, his most popular album, one of the best-selling live albums of all time. But I was glad to find this and get this. I'm not the biggest Peter Frampton fan, but I am finding out that I like a lot of his stuff, and it's always kind of hard to know where to go. I don't know a lot about him or what was the big hits beyond those two that came from Frampton Comes Alive. So I like to pick up greatest hits, listen to it, and sort of get to know those tracks so that when I put on the albums after that, I'm hearing songs pop out like I knew them from the radio, even though I never actually heard those on the radio. All right, now I know some of you guys are going to be excited about this because I've never had any of this in my collection. Picked up two Hall & Oates albums. Maybe their most popular one, which is Big Bam Boom. And I actually think this was the very first cassette that I was ever given by my older brother. Not entirely sure, I just know that he gave me his old Walkman and a Hall & Oates cassette, and I think it was this one. The album cover itself very familiar to me. Also, like I said, I think this is probably their most popular album, with the second track on here, Out of Touch, being huge. Turns out I knew the song Method of Modern Love on here. Had no idea that I knew it until I started playing it, and then I recognized that as well. But as a whole, I actually really like the album. I've always kind of steered clear of them being much more R&B soulful sounding, or in this case, sort of the dance pop 80s sound than anything that was straight up rock. But I do like a lot of that 80s pop sort of stuff. So I finally said, you know what? I want to give them a better chance. And then I found this, Change of Season from 1990. Just picked this one up because I think it was $1.99 along with this one. So I thought, why not? This one here, back to that more R&B, soulful style sound, adult contemporary than this here. So not as into this one as much as this one, but still liked it nonetheless. John Bon Jovi co-produces the first song on here. So, I'm always looking at the booklets and checking them out and, going, oh, okay, hey, maybe I'll give that a chance. Let me check that one out, Bon Jovi fan. Maybe it's going to rock. Well, it didn't, but, little things like that I always get fascinated by. Now, when a few weeks back that I was into picking up some Christopher Cross, a Little River Band, stuff like that, Hall & Oates would even kind of fall in there, but that soft rock, adult contemporary style stuff, picked up Pablo Cruise because I kept seeing this name pop up. And I knew this band in the sense that I'd seen the name and their logo and stuff like that. Don't know any songs from them. But this one was $1.99, I think, too. These might, like I said, anywhere from $1.99 or $3.99. Apparently, this one from '77, Worlds Apart, is their most popular album. I didn't even know that when I picked it up, but after getting it and enjoying it, and I've ordered two more of their albums now from the Universal Japan reissues that have been coming out lately. So it's cool. Those are Japanese editions that are like $13 to $14 a piece domestically here in the States, making it really cool and easy to get a Japanese copy of something. It's essentially their version of the nice price, but because it's that, the US has been importing all of these things. And I think that's really cool to be able to get those things. Found this one. This one here's worth quite a bit. Very hard to come by. Dave Mason's Split Coconut. I'd only been able to find it on one of those BGO twofer type things where you get two albums on one. And I'd already picked up the second album that came with this, so I didn't want to just pick it up for Split Coconut, but I found it on One Way Records. Good label for reissues and stuff like that. So picked it up. This one's got definitely, probably because of the title and the second song on here or whatnot, but definitely has a more island feel to it than some of his other stuff. So I didn't get far into that one. Don't know how I'm going to feel about it in the end of the day, but did get that. This next one was a cool find. I do have a vinyl LP replica CD version of this from Japan, but I don't prefer those. I definitely prefer the jewel case editions, and found Steve Miller Band Italian X-Rays and got this one in jewel case, a remastered edition of it for $5.99. So that was pretty cool to find that. I do know the album though. Not one of my favorites from him. Definitely liked up till the Abracadabra album. And then after that, it started getting a little too poppy for me kind of stuff. But glad to have that one in the collection. Actually, a jewel case, I can put it on the wall with everything else, because those Japanese replica ones, those go in different locations. They're too big, usually to fit on the shelves comfortably and so forth. And then found a CD or a jewel case edition of this one, Protocol. Before became after. So this here is Kerry Livgren of Kansas with the band that was pre-Kansas before changing members and ultimately changing the name to Kansas. But that lineup got back together in 2004 and began recording. So if you ever wanted to know what Kansas sounded like before Kansas, that's these guys here. And they did put out an album of early Kansas recordings by that lineup, which I guess was fairly successful, leading them to actually reform and start recording new material. And in the end, they made 3 new albums, put out 4 total, that one of original recordings plus 3 new studio ones. So technically this would be their second album, but first of new original material. It's on the SPV label, Inside Out. Very cool stuff. If you're a Kansas fan, you're going to love this. I like it. I had a cardboard sleeve edition that was a promo copy that I found at a local record store, but never found one with the booklet and everything, and was glad to get it. And I think I picked this one up for $1.99 or $2.99. So I don't mind replacing ones, because I think the original one I got was only 99 cents. So like in all, I spent $3 or $4, even though I ended up buying 2 copies of it, to finally get this one where I now have the art and everything. So there you go, 16 items that I picked up, those 4 new releases, those 12 used catalog releases type stuff like that, but a lot of cool stuff in there, kind of all over the map genre wise. But it's been nice because I was in the lull. You saw last week's where I only got 2 things. So it was nice this week to get so many more things to really be able to sink my teeth into and enjoy all of that. So don't forget that this coming weekend is Saturday, Record Store Day. Going to be a lot of cool stuff at that. So stick around and come back next Wednesday and you'll see all of my loot from that. Plus, Friday, April 14th is a huge release day. I've got 7 or 8 things brand new, including the new Metallica. So all that stuff will be talked about in next week's episode. Do come back for that. All right, everyone, take care. Have a good one, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye-bye.